it's Ryan Gillard here. I am the owner of the Global Travel Blog, and I was just in the Philippines for about 3 weeks. I am back in Canada now. As you can see, we have a snowstorm outside. I wish I was back in the Philippines. And while I was there, it's becoming a very touristy destination. So I thought I'd make this video to go over the top tips that people might want to know before visiting the Philippines. Now, I've been to the Philippines on 3 separate occasions. I actually lived there for about 5 months in the past in Manila. I was there last year in Puerto Galera, and just recently I did the whole Visayas area. And I'll give you my take on what it's like to travel in the Philippines. And first up, let's talk about getting into the Philippines. Now, one of the more annoying aspects of flying into the Philippines is dealing with the ETravel app. Now, it was annoying for me because I got to the Calgary airport, about to drop my bags off, and they're asking for my ETravel card. I had no idea what this was. Nobody told me about it. Maybe it's on me for not looking at that in advance, but it was annoying because the information they're asking for, I didn't really have it offhand, and it was just kind of clunky. I couldn't get through the app all that easily, and it took like 20 minutes, so it was a bit frustrating, especially if you have a short window to get through security and get on your plane. So I'd look at this in advance if possible. And the next point is the visa requirements. Now, this was pretty easy. I landed in the Philippines, I think it was like 5 or 6 in the morning. It wasn't that busy yet. And so I got to the customs office and I got through there in like 2 seconds. I think most countries, they give you a visa on arrival for 30 days. And it was very easy. It didn't take too much time at all. And I'll put a link in the description where you can find the website for finding out your country's visa regulations. It was pretty easy though. And next up, I'll just go over some frequently asked questions that I've come across. And one of the big ones is, when is the best time to visit the Philippines? Now, this depends on where you're going, as the monsoon winds can be different in different parts of the country. But for most travelers who are on the west side of the country, so Palawan, Manila area, Boracay, the Visayas, the dry season is typically between November until May. And on the east part of the country, it flips around. So the best time to visit the east side is the dry season, which is April to October. Now, you have to be mindful of typhoons as well, which generally happen in the Philippines between June to September. And this is no joke. I lived in Manila during 2 typhoons in the past, and I've never seen so much rain in my life, and the entire city flooded. So if you are thinking of traveling during those times, be mindful of where the typhoons are, and I'd keep an eye on the weather. Now let's talk about landing in the Philippines. Now, don't assume that you just have to land in Manila. Manila's airport is horrible. I think it's one of the worst airports in the world. I love the Philippines, but I hate the Manila airport. If you are planning to go like in the northern part of Luzon, I would look at connecting flights that go into Clark, which is about 100 kilometers north of Manila. That way you can avoid all of the traffic and the headache of Manila and be off on your way to northern Luzon. Most people don't know about that destination, but there is an international airport there, Clark, in the Angeles area. I would definitely look at that. If you are going to the Visayas area, I would look at connecting in Cebu City, which the airport is way nicer than Manila, and you're very close to a lot of the top tourist destinations like Bohol, Negros, Cebu itself. And if you are planning to go to Bohol, you can skip the Cebu to Bohol ferry by landing in Panglao. Now, to do that, you'd have to fly from, say, North America and land in Korea, and then take a connecting flight from Korea directly to Panglao. That way you can avoid Cebu City and Manila. And the Panglao airport is like, I don't know, a 10-minute drive from Malona Beach, which is the main tourist part of Bohol. That will save you a lot of headache as well. Now, getting into the country, I'd also look at connecting flights from Manila. It can make a big difference. And for example, I flew from Calgary to Vancouver, Vancouver to Manila overnight. And then in Manila, I connected to Dumaguete on the island of Negros. And I did it because it was like $500 cheaper than going to Cebu City for whatever reason. And from Dumaguete, you can easily take the ferry to Bohol or the ferry to Cebu. Quite easy. And there's actually a lot of good scuba diving in the Dumaguete area. So look at other options that are connecting from Manila. It can make a big difference. And it's also good to point out, if you are landing in Manila, the airport is a bit of a mess. I love the country, but I don't really care too much for the Manila airport. The terminals are not connected. It's overcrowded. The bathrooms suck. Not much of a good experience at the Manila airport. If you are landing there and you have to change terminals, I would give yourself lots of time, because I had to get all of my bags at Terminal 2, I believe I was at, then take the bus to Terminal 1. So it probably took me like an hour to do that. So if you are connecting there, give yourself a lot of time, because the airport, it's a bit clunky, it's not the best. and you might get delayed, customs, getting your bag and then transferring to different terminals. You can't walk to the different terminals. You have to take the bus or a cab. So it's not the most ideal situation for tourists. And the next question here, is the Philippines safe for travel? Now, I get this one quite often, and the easy answer is 100% yes, it's safe for tourists. Again, I spent about 5 months in Manila. I went all over the place. Tourist areas, non-tourist areas. I took jeepneys, LRT, MRT, walked around on my own at night, went to Chinatown, everywhere. And everyone was so friendly to me. I didn't have any issues whatsoever. I could be walking down the side of the road and just random people start talking to me, giving me advice. They're just super friendly. I was in Bohol about 3 weeks ago, and I was living in a place maybe 10 minutes from the main kind of restaurant and bar area. And I'd walk to town and people would just stop and give me a ride. Like, they're just super friendly people. I didn't have any issues whatsoever my entire time in the Philippines, and I probably spent about 6 months of my life there. So I have no issues whatsoever. I could see myself retiring in the Philippines in the future, and that's how friendly and safe I think it is. And the next point is ATMs and money in the Philippines. And I'll start off with ATMs. If you're in most tourist areas, they're all over the place. They're not too difficult to find. Sometimes they're offline, but there's always another one that's not too far away. I didn't have much issues with finding an ATM while I was there. The Philippines is mostly a cash society, so definitely bring a lot of cash, both large bills, but mostly small bills. If you try to pay for something that's, say, 150 pesos, and you give them like $1,000 peso bill, it'll be hard for many people to break that. The best spot to break large bills is usually like a 7-Eleven, busy convenience stores, stuff like that. And the use of credit cards is definitely limited. Again, it's mostly a cash society. Some scuba diving outfits or hotels, they might use credit cards, but I found that most of them wanted cash. So it's a bit annoying because carrying a lot of cash around is not the best. So you want to have a combination, again, of large bills, small bills. And I found a good option is actually to book your hotels online. That way you can pay by credit card and save your cash. That's what I was doing. I found it just a bit more helpful. Now let's talk about getting around the Philippines. So I already mentioned all the flight connections and stuff like that. Let's talk about actually getting from one destination to another. Now, if you're in the bigger cities, I would download the Grab app. It's just like Uber. It works exactly the same. And it's the easiest way to get around big cities like Cebu City and Manila. You can avoid bartering with cab drivers or having them take advantage of you. The app, it's just so easy. I'd recommend downloading that before you get to the Philippines. And now let's talk about getting from like one destination to another. And I'll give you the example of getting from Palawan, Negros to Bohol, Cebu. Now, all of the islands they're quite mountainous, so it's a bit of a trek and an adventure getting around. And there's no freeways that I could see like they are in the USA, where we can go 140 kilometers an hour. Nothing like that. So it is a bit of a slow-going process, a bit of an adventure. And going from Palawan, so here's a good example. From Palawan to the port, I took a tricycle. That tricycle probably cost me like 250 pesos. Then from the port from Negros to Cebu, it took me like half an hour. That only cost me like 100 pesos, so not much money at all. And then when I got to the Cebu side, another tricycle took me to the bus station. That tricycle ride was like 100 pesos. And then the bus from whatever town I was in to Bohol took me like 2 hours. And I think it cost about 150 pesos. And this whole trip took me like, 4 to 5 hours or less. And it didn't cost all that much money at all. But it is slow going in the Philippines. If you go from, say, Bohol to Cebu City, if you look on the map, it's only like 80 kilometers, which you could do in less than 1 hour in Canada. But that ride from Bohol to Cebu takes like 4 to 5 hours. So that gives you an idea of how slow going it is in the Philippines. But it's also very scenic, and it's just a bit of an adventure. And the next point, is English common? And the easy answer is 100% yes. English is all over the place in the Philippines, and most people are fairly proficient with English. What I learned is that the Philippines, there's a lot of dialects, different languages there, and English is a good backup language for them locally. So you'll find it all over the place. Like Taglish is kind of like a mixture of Tagalog and English. But for the most part, I would say like you're talking to a cab driver or someone in a restaurant, they all speak English to a decent level. And I just found it super easy as an English speaker to get around. I had no issues whatsoever. I mean, occasionally you might come across someone that doesn't speak English, but that's pretty rare though in the Philippines. It is the easiest country in Southeast Asia to get around from an English perspective. So no issues there whatsoever. Now let's talk about the food. Now you might get some negative reviews about the food in the Philippines, but from my experience, it's not that bad. It's not nearly as famous as, say, like Thai food or Mexican, but there are some good things there. For whatever reason, they love carbonara in the Philippines. Every restaurant that I went to has a carbonara version, and some are great, some maybe not that great. Local food, I like the pancit bihon, which is kind of like their pad thai, the lechon, the adobo. Lots of fruit. Filipino mangoes are like the best. Like seafood, fresh fruit, rice, very common. So their food's not that bad, but it's not as famous as, say, like Thai or Mexican. And of course, you have to try the Jollibee. That's like their kind of like their McDonald's version. Next point is how much are hotels and hostels? This depends on the island. Some islands are more expensive than others. It also depends on the time of the year. I was there December 28th to January 16th. And so a very busy time of the year with Christmas, and the prices were inflated. But I was paying about 2,000 pesos a night for most places that I went to. Some places they'll combine it with scuba diving, get a bit of a better deal. But on average, for like a decent place, not super high end, not low end, I was paying about 2,000 pesos a night. You can find guest houses that are way cheaper, that might cost a few dollars per night. Or you can also find really high end places as well. So it depends on where you are and how much you want to spend. But a good place with your own bathroom, maybe a pool, decent area, might be like 2,000 pesos per night. Next point I get quite often, where are the best places for family travel? And I'll get into this as we go forward, but the two places that come to mind, I would say, is Boracay. That's kind of like your normal beach destination, or Bohol, lots of families there as well. Those two come to mind. But I think anywhere in the Philippines is good for families. It's a very young population, and you see kids all over the place. So I do think it's a good spot in general for kids. But those two places come to mind is Boracay and Cebu. And the next point, I found this one online, is the Philippines accessible? So is it good for travel with people that have disabilities, maybe they're in a wheelchair or crutches and stuff like that? And I would say not really, but that's coming from Calgary, Canada, which is a very new, modern city. I find anywhere in Southeast Asia, you're jumping over things, the sidewalks are all uneven, the sidewalk will just disappear sometimes, you're walking on the roads. I don't find anywhere in Asia is that accessible if you compare it to living in a new modern city like Calgary, Canada. So the easy answer I would say is not that accessible. I mean, you could do it, it's just don't expect they're gonna have like wheelchair ramps and stuff like that from what I've seen. Next point is cell, Wi-Fi, internet. Now, sometimes the internet's working just fine, no issues whatsoever. In other places, it'll say I have like 2 or 3 bars, but nothing is working. So it's a bit hit and miss, the internet. If you are traveling there, I would highly recommend getting an eSIM. I use one called Air Allo, and it worked just fine. I paid about $30 for a month of data. And I think I had to top it up once, and it cost me like $5 or whatever. Way cheaper. I had cell internet the whole time. And if I just used my Roam Like Home plan, that would have cost me like, I don't know, $500 or more for that trip. So definitely look at an eSIM. They are very affordable, and it's a bit of a game changer, allowing you to have cell internet while you're out of Wi-Fi zone. And last up on the frequently asked questions is some things that you might want to consider bringing with you. So obviously it's a tropical country, you want to have like shorts and lightweight clothing, but here are some things that you might not have thought about. And the first one is whenever I go to the tropics, I always wear like jeans to the airport. You're wearing jeans on the flight. Then I take them off when I get where I'm going, and I never use them again. But jeans are quite heavy, they take up lots of space in your backpack. I would recommend getting cargo shorts for the flight. And then once you land in the Philippines, just take off the bottom parts of them, and it saves you lots of room in your bag. So I have a link in the description for some cargo shorts. Definitely a travel adapter. I believe the Philippines uses type 1, 2, and 3 for the electrical outlets. From what I've seen though, most plugins were like the two-prong, the US style. So my adapter, which I'll put a link in the description as well, has the US, Europe, and Australian outlets and USB connection, so it's quite handy. The Philippines also loves their coins. They've got coins for, I think, 1, 5, 10. There's too many. Your wallet gets way down, it gets like this thick. So definitely bring a coin pouch if you can. It definitely makes things a bit easier. If you're into scuba diving or the beach or snorkeling, here are some things that you might want. The first being a GoPro. They got some of the best diving in the world. I use a GoPro 10 and it takes awesome videos. I'd also look at getting some reef-safe sunscreen. So the coral reefs, if you use regular sunscreen, it does damage them. So you want to get the reef-safe version. I have a link in the description for that too. I'd also recommend getting a dry bag, especially if you go on scuba diving trips or to the beach. It's just like a waterproof bag you can store all of your stuff in. I think it's very handy. And again, if you are a diver, I'd recommend getting your own goggles before you come. They're not that bulky to carry, and if they're actually fitted for you, you get less water that comes in the cracks, and it's just not too loose, not too tight. If it's fitted for you, the dive is way better. So I'd recommend getting your own goggles in advance. And lastly, I would consider getting a Kindle. Books can be bulky and it can weigh you down. So a Kindle eliminates having like 2 or 3 books with you. And I'd also consider getting an Amazon Fire tablet. Now I carry a MacBook Air, but these Macs are getting ultra expensive. And for the most part, your Wi-Fi is only working occasionally. And they're a lot cheaper, these Amazon Fire tablets. So if you're just watching movies or sending the odd email here and there, they're not as bulky and they're way cheaper. So that's one thing to consider, is getting the Amazon Fire tablet. And again, there are links in the description for all of these items, which I think are very helpful. And next up, I'll just go through some of the areas that you might want to consider traveling to and some of the questions that a lot of people have with them. So first up is Manila. And the big question is Manila safe? Is Manila worth visiting? Again, I already mentioned it earlier on that Manila is totally safe for the most part, unless you're looking for trouble. If you're in like the tourist parts of Manila, like the BGCs and the Makatis, or in this area over here, Malate, Pasay, I find that's totally fine. I lived in this area over here, and again, I spent 5 months there. I had no problems at all with living in Manila. As a tourist, I found everyone was very friendly. So I don't find that Manila is dangerous, but again, it's a massive city, and I'm sure there are parts of it that are more sketchy than others, sketchier than others. But for the most part, Manila is totally safe. The next question, which is very common, is Manila worth visiting? And I would say I like Manila because I lived there and I had some friends. And if you know people, it's a lot of fun. There's lots of good bars and restaurants. It's a very electric city, very busy and lively. But from a tourist perspective, there's not much to do. Like, it's not like Bangkok where there's really cool sites, very good tourist infrastructure, a very interesting city, Bangkok, or like Singapore and stuff like that. Manila is a giant city that's just, it's a bit of a shanty town, and it's not that exciting from a tourist perspective. So if you have friends and family there, definitely it's worth visiting. It could be a lot of fun if you know people. But if you're going to be in the Philippines for 2 weeks, I would very much recommend limiting your time in Manila. Actually, if I had only 2 weeks in the Philippines, I wouldn't spend any time in Manila. I'd even coordinate it so that I can land somewhere like Cebu City and avoid the whole capital region. That's just my opinion. I like the city again, but from a tourist perspective, I would limit my time there. Now, if you have to stay in Manila, where are the best spots? So I'm just going to zoom down here. So the airport is actually right over here. And if you look at the scale here, 1 kilometer is like this far. So if you look at the map this way, it doesn't look that far, but it's very deceiving because you could be in Makati over here, take a cab to the airport, and it takes you like over an hour. Or longer sometimes, depending on how bad the traffic is. So it is a very congested city. So if you are flying in and out of Manila, I would avoid anything north of the Pasig River. That's way too far. The traffic's horrendous. I would definitely stay in BGC area over here, Makati, and around the Mall of Asia over here is my recommendation. Because the traffic is brutal. The Manila airport is also not the best. So I would definitely stay kind of in this area if you're traveling in and out of the city. Now, if given the choice, this is where I lived when I spent 5 months in the Philippines. I was on Taft Avenue, and I was close to De La Salle University, which I believe is somewhere around here. And it was quite convenient because the LRT and the MRT, there's a line that runs through it right here. So it's a good way to get it around the city. And the other line is over here, I believe. So that's a good area to consider. Some of the main tourist sites are actually not far from here, like Fort Santiago, Intramuros. You've got the famous church over here. Chinatown's up here. A lot of tourists will actually stay here in Makati. This is kind of like the downtown part of Manila. I stayed here near the filling station, which is a famous restaurant, and it was just okay. I found there was too many prostitutes around here. Like I could be going to get like a bottle of water, and I'd be hearing massage, massage, like every 2 minutes. So it got a bit annoying, but that comes with the territory, I guess. This might be controversial, but I didn't like the BGC area. So whenever you Google where to stay in Manila, you always hear BGC. That is, it's like a tiny pocket of Manila that's kind of westernized and very clean and modern, but it's not the real Manila, and I found it kind of boring. So if it were me, I'd stay over here in this area, but that's just my own preference. Nothing wrong with BGC. It's definitely probably the most expensive part of the city. But it didn't feel like Manila to me, and it felt a bit too, what's the word? It was too gentrified. It was too, like you'd see stores that you'd see in Canada and stuff like that, maybe too Western. So my preference would be these two areas, Makati or this area over here. Again, just my opinion, but take it for what it's worth. Now, getting around Manila, I would download the Grab app. It's like Uber. That way you know how much the fare is. You don't have to negotiate with cab drivers. They won't try to rip you off. If you have to deal with a cab driver, I found it was like 50-50. Because I'm like a white guy, obviously a tourist, some will take advantage of you and some won't. I'd say it was like 50-50. So sometimes I'd be negotiating my fare, and I had a rough idea what the prices were. And sometimes I'd pay a little bit more, but whatever. And sometimes they want to use the meter, so it depends on the person. But for the most part, it's always a good idea in foreign countries, if you have to negotiate the cab, to do that before you get into the vehicle, just so you know what you're getting into. But again, I'd use the Grab app if possible. And if you are staying in this area over here, you can use the LRT line. The LRT, it's a bit of a shit show. It's very busy. But it works just fine. It's just quite busy. And some of the stations like EDSA can be a bit of an eye-opener, where you'll see like naked homeless children and stuff like that, which you don't see like in Canada at all. So some things like that are a bit of an eye-opener. But again, I never had any issues with anybody in Manila, or I never saw any fights or muggings and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sure it's a big city. I'm sure it happens. But I never seen it. But there are some things like that, like homeless situation in Manila can be a bit of an eye opener for someone coming from Canada. Now, in terms of tourist activities in the Philippines, it's not like Bangkok where you have a lot of really cool things to see. For the most part, like the tourist spots are right here in this chunk of the city. You got Fort Santiago, you've got Intramuros, Chinatown is up here. The Minor Basilica and National Shrine. This is a pretty cool church. But again, if you have like a day in the Philippines, you can see stuff like this. But sometimes it's not worth the hassle to deal with the traffic to get to some of these places. So again, it's not much of a tourist city. You got the Rizal Park over here. This is like the main chunk of tourist spots in the city. There's a Manila Zoo. I wouldn't go there. I've been there in the past, and it's nothing special. It's not worth the time, in my opinion. In the Makati area, you have the Greenbelt Mall. Where is it here? The Greenbelt. This is a bit of an oasis in the Philippines. It's a very nice mall. You got some cool gardens and stuff like that. But again, it's just a mall. There's like where I live in Calgary, there's like 5 or 6 malls that are just like Greenbelt. So it's nothing. I wouldn't fly 10,000 kilometers to go to a mall in the Manila. But if you are in this area, it can be a bit of a shrine. You got some greenery versus this massive shantytown type city. That's what I would look at if I was in this area. And there's a few museums here and there, but overall I don't think Manila is that much of a touristy area. If you are here as a tourist, one day to see sights is probably more than enough. And how about some day trips from Manila? So if I zoom out here, what I would look at is this Tagaytay right over here. This is maybe like an hour from Manila, depending on traffic. Sometimes you can be stuck in traffic for a very long time in Manila, but it's not that far. The scale here at 20 kilometers is about this distance. So it's probably like 60 kilometers from Manila, not that far. So like you're on an island, and there's an island, and then inside the island there's like a smoking volcano. You can hike up it, which I've done. It's pretty cool. This is an interesting day trip from Manila, very scenic. What I used to do when I lived there is I would get on the bus from Manila and go all the way to Batangas, which I think would take like, I don't know, 2 hours, less than 3 hours for sure. When you get to Batangas, you can take the ferry. The ferry takes about 1 hour to get to Puerto Galera, this area right over here on Mindoro. And I love to scuba dive. And this area right here called Sabang, you got excellent scuba diving, some of the best in the Philippines. And I actually like the town quite a bit. It's kind of like a pirate town. It's like a scuba diving pirate town, in my opinion. That's how I would describe it. It's a bit seedy. You got lots of nightlife, bars, restaurants, and diving. So you dive all day, drink all night. It's a bit fun. Great for long weekends and stuff like that if you're in the Manila area. And there's also other parts of Puerto Galera, which people just call this general area, Puerto Galera. There's White Beach over here, a very nice beach with restaurants and stuff like that. So this is one area that I would consider as a day trip from Manila. And if you're a diver, again, they'll do occasional trips to Verde Island, which has some fantastic scuba diving. And I also know if you are a diver, I haven't done this, but I definitely know about it. If you are a scuba diver, there's a place around here called Anilao. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, which is known for muck diving, which you might want to consider not that far from Manila. Now, if you are going to northern Luzon, so Luzon is the main island, if you do plan to go to this part of the country, if you can do it, I would land in a place called Clark, which is over here in the Angeles area. If you can fly there, you can avoid this whole mess of Metro Manila and save yourself a lot of headache. And then from Clark, you can take off to other popular destinations. I would highly recommend, it's called Banawe. It's somewhere in here. You have this mountainous rice terraces, one of the craziest things that I've seen in my life. Now, one thing I will mention, though, is I made the mistake of being in Manila, looking at a legend like this and thinking, oh, it's 50 kilometers, it's about this distance. Maybe it'll take me a couple hours to get to Banawe, which may be like 200 kilometers. It took me about 10 to 12 hours probably to do that drive in a bus. And the bus was freezing. I didn't realize they just cranked the AC. There was like one temperature they used, and it was full blast AC. It was so cold. It was raining so hard. It was coming through the roof, and the locals were putting gum on the roof to block the rain. Though it was a nasty drive. It took forever. But it was worth it, though. Banawe was very cool. And other destinations that you might be interested in northern Luzon is Baler, which is a town right over here known for surfing. You've also got Baguio, which is a very cool mountainous town. You've got Vigan City, which is a colonial city. So lots of different things to do in Luzon. And one thing that kind of cracks me up is I didn't learn my lesson when I went to Banawe on the nasty bus ride. I did a similar thing from Manila to Legazpi, which took, I think, even longer. And I went all the way from Manila to Legazpi. It took me probably more than 10 hours on that bus. I went there to see whale sharks. I guess it's famous for whale sharks. I got all the way down there, and I didn't realize that they were out of season. And there wasn't that much to do in Legazpi. I went to the Mayon volcano. It was very cool, very beautiful. But the town itself, or the city itself, I found it kind of, it wasn't that exciting from a tourist perspective, but definitely very beautiful. If you do go to Legazpi to see whale sharks, make sure they are in season. So I've covered Manila and Luzon, and I've already mentioned a little bit about Mindoro. There's not much to do on this island. It's not that populated, and it's mostly for scuba diving. The main ticket here is Puerto Galera, which I've already talked about. And if you want to go to the Apo Reef, which is somewhere in here, you would go to San Jose, this town over here, and they do live aboard ships. So you're diving on the ship, and you're spending like a week on board, and you do that from San Jose. Next up is Boracay. And when I first saw the word, I thought it was called Boracay, but they make fun of you if you say it that way. So it's Boracay, which is this island right over here off the coast of Panay. And there's an airport here. You can actually fly into this right here. You can see the airport strip, and a tricycle to the port, and then the port to Boracay. Doesn't take that long at all. Now, I've been to Boracay. I liked it. One of the best beaches I've ever seen in my entire life. It was very long, and it was very wide. Beautiful white sand beach. Nice hotels and restaurants. This is a good family destination, I would say. It's like your typical beach destination. You might get a bit bored, though. If you're traveling solo and you want to do like the adventurous things, like the canyoneering and the scuba diving and stuff like that, You might get a bit bored of Boracay. That's just my opinion. I know I did. I did some dives here, which were okay. They weren't like the best of the best. They were just okay. But definitely one of the best beaches I've ever seen in my entire life was in Boracay. So that's Boracay. Here's Panay. There's not that much to do in Panay from a tourist perspective. A very scenic island. I've actually bussed from Iloilo all the way up here to get to Boracay. Same thing with Negros. I bussed all the way from Dumaguete to get to Boracay, and I took bus, boat. Very interesting. There's a bit of an adventure. Negros, the main draw here, from my opinion, is Dumaguete and Darwin, which is a smaller town right here. Dumaguete itself is like a university town, nice promenade. You've got the ferry terminal that will take you to like Cebu and Bohol. If you're into scuba diving, which is the main draw here, is this island, where is it here? Apple Island right here. Some of my best dives that I've done were around this Apple Island. Incredible. And you can access it from both Dumaguete and Darwin. I would say Darwin's probably more typical. I stayed at the Bongo Divers here, and they were awesome. And so I highly recommend, if you are looking to do some fun dives or get certified, this Darwin area is definitely would be on my list for sure. And next up we have the island of Cebu, a very famous island. And I'll start here with Cebu City, which is kind of like a miniature version of Manila. I say that, but it's still a big city. It's about 3 million people. It's cluttered. It's busy. It's not unsafe. I walked around Cebu City and I had no problems at all. It's just not a very tourist-friendly city, I would say. Is it worth visiting? I would limit your time here. It's a place that you might have to get in and out of if you are traveling to southern Philippines, because the airport is right here. And it's also a good port destination. You can take the ferry from here to Bohol, to Negros, to other places, Siquijor, and stuff like that. So odds are, if you are coming to this part of the Philippines, you'll spend some time in Cebu, sorry. But I would limit your time here. There's not much to do from a tourist perspective. I spent 2.5 days here. My first day, I actually went scuba diving on Mactan, which is this island right here where the airport is. Lots of resorts and beaches over here. And some of these islands that you see over here have good scuba diving. Might not be as famous as like Bohol and Negros and stuff like that, but the diving was actually not too bad. And other things that you might want to do from a tourist perspective is the big one here is the Magellan's Cross. There's also a fort to this area right here. I forget what it's called. Fort San Pedro, Magellan's Cross, and some fancy churches. You can see most of these the tourist sites in an afternoon. And but if I had the choice to do it all over again, I would probably just avoid Cebu City altogether and just get a bus on out of there to other more famous spots of Cebu. And one of the more famous spots on the island of Cebu for a tourist, if you go to northern Cebu, you take the ferry here to Malapascua. This is like a little tiny island that's known for your beaches and for scuba diving. And you can see the thresher sharks here. That's what it's famous for. There's like a thresher shark cleaning station. It's very common to see the thresher shark. And definitely a place that I would stay at. If you leave Cebu City, it takes you about 3 to 4 hours, and you can get all the way from the city to a place called Moalboal over here. Now, Moalboal refers to this whole region over here, but most tourists will actually stay in this chunk of the town right over here. This is where you'll find all of the bars, the restaurants, the scuba diving shops, the stores for tourists and stuff like that. Very lively area. It's a pretty cool place. And lots of day trips from here as well. But the main draw for a lot of people is the sardine ball. You can literally walk off the shore here and swim out like, I don't know, 10 meters or so and see large sardine schools. It's crazy. I did a dive here, and they were everywhere, all along this coast. And I guess they never leave. They're always there. And it's one of the coolest things that I've seen is the sardine ball on Moalboal. What else you can do in Moalboal is the Badian Highlands. So I took a motorbike, and I went into this area over here. And you get some excellent views of the island. It's fun to just ride your motorbike around town. Osmeña Peak is around here. I think it's right here is the highest peak in the Cebu area, as far as I know. One of the best day trips that I've done is called the Badian Canyoneering, which is somewhere around here at Kawasan Falls, which you can see right here. This was awesome. This was like I think it was 7 kilometers. So I zip lined into the starting area, which is pretty cool. Then you're jumping into the water, you're scaling around the rocks. There's multiple waterfalls. A very cool day trip. It wasn't that costly as well. I would definitely recommend doing that. Other things that you can do in Cebu is Oslob is known for finding or seeing whale sharks around here. It's a bit of a day trip. If you do Oslob from Cebu City or Bohol, plan for a long day because the distances, they don't look that far, but it takes forever to get around the Philippines. But very interesting though. You can also see whale sharks on Bohol, but they might have just changed that. I saw some news the other day that they banned that. So that's something that you should look into if they're still allowing the whale shark tours, because it's definitely very cool. And one thing that I would do if I were to go back to the Philippines, if I was flying out of Cebu City, I would stay in Bohol and have your flight in the afternoon and take like a morning bus from here to Cebu City. It takes like 3 to 4 hours, and just avoid staying in Cebu City altogether. That's what I would do if I were to do it all over again. So that's Cebu, a very popular island. When I was in Dumaguete, I found there's lots of tourists that were going to Siquijor, lots of Europeans. I haven't been here yet. It's on my to-do list. From what I can tell, it's known for just a more laid-back lifestyle, a bit cheaper. You got excellent scenery, nice beaches. But there were a lot of tourists going here, so something must be up. I would put a star beside this one and look into it if you are heading to this area. Now let's talk about Bohol. So this is a very famous island. You have the Chocolate Hills, which are over here near the Carmen area. Very cool. We actually did the whole countryside tour. That's a good question that people are asking. Is the countryside tour worth it? So what that is most tourists are staying here in the Panglao area, Alona Beach, and the countryside tour, they'll take you on a caravan or a minivan from here all the way to the Chocolate Hills. You'll spend some time here. We actually did the ATV tour as well. So we got on these quads and we drove around the Chocolate Hills area. It was quite fun. So there's the Chocolate Hills. After that, they'll take you to the Tarsier Sanctuary. That's the little primates that can fit in your hand. That's also very interesting too. And they'll stop in some cloud forest on the way there for like a picture session. Then they'll stop at the Lobok River, which is this place right here. It's a bit of a tourist trap. Like they get 20 or 30 tourists on a boat, and they have like a free buffet. Not free, you have to pay for it, but there's a buffet and drinks, and you float down the Lobok River. It is very scenic. The food was pretty good, but there must have been 20 or 30 boats, all packed with tourists. So it is definitely a very busy destination, a bit of a tourist trap. But I think it's still worth it. From Lobok River, they'll stop at a zoo, which I didn't think was that great. And finally, they'll stop at a church in Tagbilaran City. The church was under construction when I was there, so it wasn't worth seeing. But the actual countryside tour, it takes like the whole day. It wasn't that expensive, but I think it's worth it. If you have like 5 or 6 days in Bohol, I would definitely do it. One thing I'd highly recommend, when I was there, we went to this place called, was it Loe or Lila? One of these places has the whale shark tour, and you can jump in the water with the whale sharks, and it's very cool. But like I mentioned earlier, they might have canceled that. So look into that before you do get to Bohol. If they are offering it, it's a rare chance to see whale sharks. Very interesting. The main draw for me in Bohol and the Panglao area is scuba diving. You've got some of the best diving here at this Balakasag Island, which is this island right here. Amazing. You've also got excellent diving at Pamilacan. And we also did some dives at Dohol Point, which is over here. If you are looking to get scuba certified, I would definitely put Alona Beach and Panglao on your map. Just fantastic diving around here. It's a pretty cool area. And one thing to mention, I actually mentioned this earlier, if you are coming to this area, look at finding a way to fly directly here to the Panglao International Airport. If you're coming from like the USA or Canada, find a flight that connects in Korea. Then from Korea, you can fly here direct to Panglao. It'll save you a lot of time and headache. And as you can see, the airport from here to Alona Beach is like 1 kilometer. It's not that far at all. It just saves you a lot of headache. But Bohol is a very cool island. I would definitely put it on your list of places to visit. This big island right here in Mindanao, I haven't been here yet. There is some political unrest in parts of this, so that's why I haven't been here. But I know that certain parts of it are definitely totally safe, like the Surigao is known for surfing. That's this destination right over here. If you're into surfing, I would definitely put this on your radar. And these two islands right here, Samar Island and Leyte, I haven't been to these yet. It's on my to-do list. I will do another trip to the Philippines and check out more of these Pacific destinations like Surigao, Samar, and maybe Baler up here. So keep watching my channel. I'll definitely be back in the Philippines and check out some of these more remote areas. And last but not least, we have Palawan. Now, I haven't been here yet. I keep telling myself I'll go back, but I keep ending up going to like Puerto Galera and the Visayas. This is on my to-do lists and has been for a long time, becoming very popular. It looks like one of the most scenic islands in the entire world. You've got the subterranean river. You've got World War II wrecks in Coron and El Nido, excellent scuba diving. It looks like a very adventurous place. I haven't been there yet, but I do know that it's becoming very popular. So if you are into adventurous activities and beautiful islands, I would definitely consider going to Palawan. And there you have it. That's my take on traveling to the Philippines. Is it worth it? Is it safe? And where to go? I hope you enjoyed it. Any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to help you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.